Welcome to Vertical Optimization. My name is Emeka and I am the president of the firm. If you're watching this, chances are you're interested in one of possibly three things. You might be thinking about raising capital to support an overseas investment. Either you're looking to start a company abroad or expand some kind of operation abroad. You may be looking to make an investment in some foreign country, or you may be looking to develop a partnership with some overseas firms that may or may not be related to the US. Either way, we can assist you. We are the managing partners of Export Path, and let me just take a few minutes to describe what Export Path is. Export Path is a multinational public-private partnership which includes several government agencies, banks, development organizations, and private firms, all of whom have gotten together to do three things, and I'll describe them in very brief terms. The first thing that Export Path seeks to do is to assist small businesses to develop products and services to be offered to foreign markets. So this could be, for instance, African companies looking to come to the US or US companies looking to go to Africa, same thing. The second service we provide in Export Path is that we provide financial support to Export Path clients. And by this I mean it could be business development assistance, it could be loans, and it could be in some instances access to grants as well to help that transnational trade process. That's the second thing we do. The third thing that we do is that we provide assistance to companies in actually dealing with the operational elements of transnational trade. So it could be assisting with market access, it could be assisting with setting up companies and overseas investments. Those are the three distinct blocks of activities that we'll cover in Export Path. And if you're interested in one or several of those, welcome, you're in the right place. This has been a very difficult time for small businesses. The global financial crisis has hit very small businesses really hard. Credit lines are drying up almost as quickly as customers and clients are. And people are starting to look at emerging markets as new investment opportunities. And we are here to assist that process. We didn't start this because of the global financial crisis, but we've seen an uptick in interest in what we do, partly because of this. People who may have their heritage or origin from some of these countries are looking to go back to invest, and also foreigners are looking for new places where they can make money and have some meaning, provide some value to people. So if this is of interest to you, we welcome you and we look forward to working with you. I probably should start by sort of describing in broad terms how Export Path works. And there are two big directions in which we work. So let's speak from the standpoint of the US. Just take the US perspective on this. One of the things that we do is to help foreign businesses, African firms in lots of cases, we work in several African countries, to develop products for export to the US. That is inbound from the standpoint of the US. And we also help US companies to develop products and services for export to emerging markets, or we assist them with the investment process in emerging markets that will be called outbound. What specifically do we do? There are four things that we do in the outbound process, and I'd like us to focus on the outbound for now. The first thing that we do is that we provide product and process development support. What service should I offer? How should I plan it? How should I develop it? What do I need to get started in a particular country or locale? We can assist you with that process. That's the first thing. You need information. You need to know what you need to know to be successful, to have a chance to have success in the market entry effort. And this is very important because in lots of cases, people just pick up and go and think, well, I hear there's lots of money to be made in country XYZ. Not so. The same careful planning that is required to succeed here in the States is required in an overseas market. In fact, even more so, because in some cases there may be more vagaries than one might be used to in the US. So Access to that information is the first thing that we can provide you. The second thing that we can do is to provide you financial support, and we're going to spend a bit more time talking about the financial support, the financial assistance that we can provide you. Vertical optimization is a loan originator for OPIC. We'll talk some more about this. We also have banking partners in Export Path who can provide you considerable assistance in getting your business up and running or expanding it into overseas markets where that is reasonable. And the third thing that we can do is to provide you operations support. You're on the ground, you need all kinds of assistance to make things work, what we call access to the marketplace. We provide that as well. Let me just digress a bit and talk about the outbound process from the States. We are going to come back to talk in detail about our relationship with OPIC, the services that we provide. But let's just talk about the outbound process from the US for a second. I've met lots of entrepreneurs in the States who are interested in investing in Africa, who are interested in investing in all sorts of emerging markets, but don't have first-hand information about what obtains in the markets of interest. And my advice is always the same. Go there, get first-hand knowledge, drink the water, talk to the people, know it as well as you possibly can before you commit yourself to something that you may not understand. And it became clear to us after a while that even in that process, businesses needed some assistance from us. And so we started what we call business voyages. And what are business voyages? It's a structured process. We take several businesses to a certain country of interest at a particular time. They go in for a few days, a little bit of sightseeing, but the bulk of it is they sit across the table from prospective partners in the country, talk to them, do a deal across the desk. And when that is done, they then know enough to come back and we can provide them support on an ongoing basis in the country of interest. So a business voyage is part of our outbound process, part of facilitating that outbound process. The other question we get quite a bit is, well, where should I invest? And truth be told, there, just about every country you can think of in Africa and the Caribbean has excellent investment potential. And that's a decision that has to be made on an individual basis. How much money are you looking to invest? What capabilities do you bring? What interests do you have? What level of risk are you willing to accept? All those things come into the decision-making process. And so rather than tell you where to invest, I thought it would be better for you to hear from the envoys from some of the countries in which we work. Nobody can speak better to a country's potential than the ambassadors from the countries. These are Export Path partners. And so to begin with, I thought you should join me in a conversation I had with the outgoing ambassador from Ethiopia to the United States. He is very eloquent, very familiar with the investment opportunities, the business culture in the US and the investment opportunities back in Ethiopia. So let's watch.
I'm the Ethiopian ambassador to the United States, the outgoing ambassador. I've now finished my term. I've been in the US for the past 3.5 years or so. I think that's good enough, unless you have a metaphysical question in mind.
Well, of course, everything in life is metaphysical, right? Have you enjoyed your tenure here as the ambassador?
That's an interesting choice of terms, enjoyed. It's been at times exhilarating, at times it can be very grueling. You know, Washington is unlike any other posting, I think, especially in this day and age. There is really no rival power, so everything under the sun, as it were, emerges as an issue here. And African embassies as a whole, we're handicapped in terms of our human resources to meet the numerous challenges we face. And so inevitably, we practice the art of curtailing, abridging ambitions. So it's been enormously challenging. It's been gratifying at the end. But it's a very busy place. It's a place where you work hard, but it is very, very meaningful work.
Clearly, as the ambassador, you've got a broad portfolio of responsibilities. Could you outline what they are, sort of in very broad terms?
Well, in the broadest terms, of course, there's political diplomacy, mainly political diplomacy. By political diplomacy, I have in mind traditional diplomacy that basically takes into account protocol that entails a relationship between one foreign ministry and another, in this case, between us diplomats and the State Department. This is very, very important. It's an important focus. But we conduct political diplomacy here also in a broader sense. We have relations not only with the State Department, more specifically with the Office of the Assistant Secretary for African Affairs, but also various different entities within different offices within the State Department horizontally. Say, for example, the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Labor, Democracy and Human Rights, the Congressional Liaison for the State Department, and other units that are not so easy to place. And then outside of the State Department, within the administration, many, many different agencies, many different departments. For example, defense, to some degree, although it's always low profile, the NSC, depending on the nature of your preoccupation. Many departments can come into play. Agriculture, certainly, and the present Secretary of Agriculture, Mr. Vilsack, is particularly interested in Africa and has joined forces with the Secretary of State to put food security at the top of the US agenda for Africa. So that's another important office. Ethiopia, for example, we have Ethiopian Airlines, so we would meet with the folks in the Department of Transportation very often. We met with the Deputy Assistant Secretary who's interested in the Ethiopian Airlines straight, FAA. I am sure I could go on and on. So there are horizontally within the administration many, many different departments and agencies that you cannot access readily from your own country, that we cannot access from headquarters. And this is really where our added value lies. There are strong links between the Office of the Assistant Secretary for African Affairs and our own Foreign Ministry. But when we go to these other entities, usually they're really difficult to access, to build real relationships with from one's own country. So I think our mission is particularly important here because we do provide significant added value there. Outside of this, then we have the field of Congress, which is a very messy realm, as you know. You have, in the House alone, you have 500 and some congressmen. It's not always as polite, but wonderful and exciting in many different ways. But it's not the State Department where you are greeted outside by a familiar face, referred to as Mr. Ambassador, and then you go through minuted discussions before, and then on the basis of shared understandings, polish points. You start from scratch. Sometimes it's difficult to know where a certain country is, to place it. People have difficulty. Not in Congress, but elsewhere. I've been asked whether it's south of Lithuania, Ethiopia. It is south, but it is much further south than Estonia, he explained. So this is another rail, which can be very important for us for different reasons. Congress is in charge of appropriations. To build support there is very important, not just on a bilateral level, continental level as well. And different issues arise. For example, in our case, the war in Somalia was another huge issue. Domestic political issues can feature prominently. So again, this is not easy to access from Addis. Lots of work there. Then you have the policy community, the more wider, more informal policy community, the decision-making folks or the people who influence the shape foreign policy significantly in this country. And you want to build real relationships, both informal and to some degree institutionalized. This is a way of deepening the partnership that you have. And especially when things sometimes become difficult and the formal channels are blocked. If you don't have these channels to fall back on, you feel it. So this is another area. Beyond that, of course, very important is economy work in terms of our economy department. We forget that the US is not only politically the central, most important actor, the hegemonic actor, as we say, globally at this point in time, but it's also the biggest economy still to date. And clearly, by far, in terms of consumption and demand for goods produced everywhere, the most important country anywhere. So, this, as a developing country in particular, this must take center stage. And I mean, in actual fact, this is probably the more important work to which the other activities are a means. Because if you look at it globally, the mission of the foreign ministry is to assist economic development. Political diplomacy, public diplomacy is a means to this end. Then, finally, let me say also, we have a huge community here, diaspora community, Ethiopian Americans, or I should say African Americans of Ethiopian descent. We also have those who haven't taken up citizenship but have lived here for a very long time. Very sizable community, very energetic community, talented community, resourceful, highly educated, many highly educated, and it's a potential asset, perhaps one of our most precious assets, in the effort to move our countries forward, to devise schemes for effectively utilizing this huge pool of talented people with enormous exposure. We not only have them here, we have them in Europe, we have them in the Middle East, we have them throughout Africa. Well, if they can circulate somehow, they needn't all come back. We may not be able to reverse the brain drain, as we call it. We have enough brain circulation. We will be certainly a very urbane and cosmopolitan society. And there are many, many different skills, know-hows that they can impart to bridge, provide a bridge between here and there for our own community, which can then also act as an important facilitator of economic ties for investors who often look for agents. Principals can't move. They need somebody who knows this language, this setting, that language, that setting, ideally positioned in this community. So to work with this community is another important task of ours. We also have consular affairs, which is actually one of the busiest parts of the embassy, departments in the embassy. It's the window to the rest. These, I think, are the major components. We have, of course, infrastructure, institutions that have infrastructure significance, administration, finance, and the like. But in actual fact, for African embassies, it's very difficult to really staff these different departments in the way that they need to be staffed. I will not mention the name of this friend, but a very senior diplomat in the city, an African diplomat, who told me, yes, public diplomacy is in the wider sense, economic and external diplomacy is the most important work for us. The Europeans do it, the Asians do it, that's the right thing to do. But my friend, let me give you advice. Don't go that way because you'll burn out. We don't have the resources. We are willy-nilly forced to do that old-time political diplomacy. Understand the source of this sentiment, but I didn't heed the advice, and I'm glad.
Speaking of heeding advice, one of the responsibilities you may describe is being a window to Ethiopia, or actually a doorway to Ethiopia. Tell me more about why U.S. firms should be interested in it. If I come through that door, what's waiting on the other side?
No, I mean, businesses come because it's good business. It's not charity. It's not infatuation. They will prosper. Why? I mean, many have a radically distorted view of the country's attractions for investors, its assets, its natural endowments. Somebody described, I think, at one point, the prospect of doing agriculture in Ethiopia somehow akin to doing agriculture on the surface of the moon, when this is fantastically wrong. We have very diverse climatic zones, 40 or so, and vast stretches that are extremely fertile, vast stretches of lands that are extremely fertile, that could do more than provide for our own needs, more than self-sufficiency, that would be described as a potential breadbasket for Africa. That should be kept in mind. So, first of all, one has to be clear about what's there on the ground, you know. And one thing is, because of this diversity of the land, of the climatic zones, we provide a possibility of more or less growing anything, if you think in terms of agriculture, and doing it all year round. We've been in discussion recently, for example, with Conagra, that is interested in taking its tomato production somewhere. They're thinking to Africa, because they want to get a few seasons, not just one season, which is what they get in. Theoretically, you could get 4 seasons. We talk about not 12, but 13 months of sunshine. There was a great tourist organization out in Ethiopia a long time ago. 12 months, 30 days, and then 1 month, which consists of 7 days, or in leap years, 8 days. Now, the idea is basically all year round, the climate or location allows us to supply all year round what can only be produced seasonally, and off peak seasons it commands the highest prices. That's a clear attraction for many companies. Another problem, water shortages. California, you have severe water shortages. Ethiopia, everyone associates again with water shortages. No, the water shortages that we do have in the northern areas have to do with rainfall, not with irrigation, not if you draw on the river basins. Our Omo, Tekeze, and the like, many river basins. So in this respect, they want to do drip irrigation. It's ideally suitable for that kind of a production. We have a vast labor force. We are the second most populous country after your own America, the Nigeria, on the continent, 75 million or so. And in terms of comparative advantage, clearly affordable labor, cheap labor is one of them. And clearly by any standard, this is something that one looks to. We have well, let me go beyond here now. Agriculture, I think we need to confine ourselves to traditional agriculture, light industry, the garment industry is one which has received a great deal of attention from our government. And it's a labor-intensive industry. There is no reason why our continent as a whole, and Ethiopia, which is abundant in labor, should not have competitive advantage in this domain. It's training we require to some degree, but our labor force is highly trainable. Best evidence for that is Ethiopian Airlines, in the most competitive industry, one of the most competitive industries in the world, the airline industry. We rank, I think, 25th in terms of profitability. It's an airline that connected the continent, as you know, flies to 30-some destinations on the continent, connected the continent then to the great markets on the east and west, one of the 3 sub-Saharan African airlines that is allowed to actually provide service here in the US and in the US, along with South African Airways and recently Cape Verde. We have ordered 12 Dreamliners, many Airbus planes. Recently we're growing and expanding at a time when other airlines are hurting. And it's all African labor force. It's an African institution, it's not just an Ethiopian institution. We also do overhaul and maintenance on Boeing planes. The only place on the continent that you can do it is in Ethiopia. In fact, from the Middle East, they come to Ethiopia and are overhauled in Ethiopia. Ethiopian labor force, that is. African labor force, because many Africans come to train as well. And, we have reached a point where, of course, there's a drain. Many South African Airways and recently Cape Verde have ordered 12 Dreamliners, many Airbus planes. Recently we're growing and expanding at a time when other airlines are hurting. And it's all African labor force. It's an African institution, it's not just an Ethiopian institution. We also do overhaul and maintenance on Boeing planes. The only place on the continent that you can do it is in Ethiopia. In fact, from the Middle East, they come to Ethiopia and are overhauled in Ethiopia. Ethiopian labor force, that is. African labor force, because many Africans come to train as well. And, we have reached a point where, of course, there's a drain. Many in the Gulf State take our talent, our pilots, our mechanics, but we produce enough to keep on going. Not quite like India in the software industry or in the computer industry, but really it's quite impressive. We're not there yet, but I think we have demonstrated clearly that trainability is not an issue. And it's a disciplined workforce. It's a huge labor force. So this is an attraction also for light industry that is labor intensive, like garment. I should also have mentioned we do very well right now. We have drawn many the horticulture business. Many companies have now opted for Ethiopia, especially for roses we are ideally situated. Highlands near the equator, so wonderful conditions are there.
Tell me what you think, what you'd like to see in terms of how we bridge this gap, sort of the mechanics of bridging this gap. There's money here to support US companies. There's money to develop companies in Ethiopia. What do you think is the best way of bridging this? Given the work that we've already started in Export Path, how do you see this happening? You've lived here, you've lived in Ethiopia. How would you go about it?
Well, there are many things to bridge, but I think it's very significant what has begun now with OPEC. For many years, it was rather difficult for Ethiopians to be able to receive that kind of a support from our people for reasons that need not concern us here. But I think it's important to look also at the assets on this end for small-scale investors and also for potential investors on a much larger scale. First of all, we have AGOA. How many is it now? Tariff categories that are duty-free, 6,000 or who knows how many. I think no African country, not even South Africa, utilizes but a small percentage of this. So the duty-free environment. I should say, by the way, for investors to Ethiopia, our geographical location, gateway to the Middle East, Europe. Europe is also a duty-free zone for us. So those who want to invest in order to export look to that. But we also have a large population, so there are many mouths to be fed there as well. So there is a potential customer base there as well. But the main point being, though, if the investor is interested in exporting either to Europe or to the US, it's a duty-free environment. Then for our own people who have ideas but no means, beyond tax exemption, we also have, for inventive ideas, worthwhile ideas, possibilities for financing ventures. In America, you have been really a leader for the Ethiopian community in this area. I very much want to thank you. And this is particularly important, I think, because what's really important is not so much the money, capital that our people bring with them from the US. For many members of our diaspora, well, they're professionals, they have savings and the like, but it might not be substantial sums to invest. What they do have that is very precious is the know-how, is the knowledge. And the constraints are often, if you think of it, really trivial in the larger scheme of things. $100,000 might open the possibility for doing something, jumpstarting something very big, allowing this transfer of knowledge, transfer of know-how, which will have sort of a transformative impact, such that it happens at a sufficiently large scale. We don't talk about incremental growth, we talk about exponential growth. So I think that's very important here to link up the AGOA environment, to link it up with the possibilities also of lifting certain constraints in terms of finance, the capacity building. Now we can talk about supply side constraints, and there are many different possibilities for also mobilizing resources to that end in this country. So I think horizontally linking them on this end is very important. We have corporations that want to go in, but then they raise questions about certain issues of skills, needs for capacity building, and so on. You have huge foundations, like the Gates Foundations, building capacities. You have the US government, which has AGOA in place. These three need to communicate as well, and then we have you. I think it needn't be at the level of each and every project, but at some macro level, I think coordination on this end is very important. And to some degree, of course, we'll have to think about linking the two other environments. But I think a major linkage first in terms of packaging it is here.
In closing, just talk to me about how you feel going back. You've been here for 3.5 years. What do you want to say to people?
It's home, My mother went back at a very difficult hour during the days of the military government, when members of our family had been killed, arrested, and the like. And the question was posed, why do you go? She said, well, what do you do after it gets dark? You've been out all day. Where do you go? You go home. Where? That's all I need to say. It's home. That's where I go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Export Path works in several countries, and Ethiopia is not the only country that offers excellent investment opportunities, as you heard from the ambassador himself. We thought that for contrast, we should present another country to you. So join me again in a conversation with the acting ambassador from the Republic of Nigeria to the US, in his own words, describing what potential exists in Nigeria. Here he is. It's nice to see you again. We're meeting again to talk about Nigeria, about trade. But for those who don't know you, what is your role at the embassy, so that people at least understand what your role in all of this is?
Great question. My name is Ambassador Wakil, Babagana Wakil. I am Nigeria's permanent observer to the Organization of American States, which has its headquarters here in Washington, the 34-member Organization of American States. The United States is also a member of the Organization of American States, and the headquarters is here in Washington. And I also double as the Deputy Chief of Mission in our embassy here. And as you may know, we do not have an ambassador accredited to the United States at the moment. So I am also the acting ambassador of Nigeria to the United States of America. So I'm wearing many caps.
How does that feel? How do you feel carrying all these responsibilities?
It's a great challenge, I must say, but I'm well prepared for it. I have been in this business for a very long time. I left the university about 30 years ago, precisely in 1979, and for the greater part of my working life, I have been in the foreign service. So, and my career has traversed all the major regions of the world, from Middle East to Asia to Europe, and now I am in the Americas. And of course, I started from Africa, so there is no part of the world that I have not been to.
We are talking about trade, foreign investment in Africa and Nigeria, to be specific. You've been around the world. You've seen what happens in other countries, and you've seen the view of Nigeria from other places. Where are the opportunities for foreign investment in Nigeria as you see it?
Another great question, of course, and as you were aware, by its sheer demographics, Nigeria presents a very huge opportunity for any investor from any part of the world, because of its internal markets, because of its human resources, both skilled and unskilled, because of its very favorable geographical and climatic environment, where you have miles and miles of tropical rainforest, miles and miles of grassland, and you have all sorts of minerals, all sorts of crops, root crops, sorghum, whatever grows in this world grows in Nigeria.
One would ask about specific sectors. You've mentioned solid minerals, you've mentioned agriculture. Are there other areas in which you see potential investment? I mean, sort of at a very high level, what other opportunities might you see?
Let us then come down to the issues that the present administration is grappling with. And you might have heard of Mr. President's 7-point agenda. And let us break it to the economic and commerce-driven aspect of that 7-point agenda, where now there is a lot of emphasis in developing Nigeria's infrastructure in terms of power supply, telecommunications, agriculture, housing, healthcare delivery, soft and hard infrastructure. All these areas are now receiving a lot of attention in government cycles, and government has now reached out to private investors to partner with private investors in this new, very nice cliche private-public partnership, and it seems to be working.
Speaking of public-private partnerships, you're involved in one, Export Path. That's one that we work on together.
That's right.
And we're looking, as the case is, to attract investors to Nigeria, just as we're helping Nigerians to export products out. Nigeria has not always gotten good press. It's easy to write a country off because of press reports, because of the negative press. It is also not true to dismiss everything that's in the press as being false, right? What is the real situation in Nigeria when it comes to corruption and the governance and all the other things that people typically complain about? What is you have a unique view on this. What is your take on it?
My take is very simple. Again, because of its demographics, Nigeria is a very big country, a country of 150 million people. Surely it must have its own bad apples. And those who live in the periphery of society is nothing unique to Nigeria. Of course, in the context of Africa, our own should be on top because we are on top demographically. If you look at the total population of Angola, it's perhaps just the population of Lagos City or Lagos State alone. It's about 50 million people. And in the US here, Angola doesn't have more than 20,000 people. We have perhaps more than 2 million people. So Nigeria's attention or the attention focus on Nigeria is inevitable. It's just sheer size, sheer demographics. And we agree, yes, we have our own fair share of bad apples. And we are addressing the issue. In the last several years, you might have heard of several legislations that have set up so many institutions to tackle corruption, headlong. These institutions have not been there before. The EFCC, the ICPC, maybe the Code of Conduct Bureau has always been there, but we have made tremendous progress, even in the eyes of the Transparency International, which measures the Corruption Perception Index. And I think that we should rather be looking at the bottle as half full rather than as half empty. And if I might cite some specific examples of some very high-profile people who have been caught up in the fight against corruption, you will remember, of course, the case of Bode George, the former deputy national chairman of the ruling party. A couple of governors like Bafarawa have recently been, on the international front. You remember the Brazilian case. There are some successes that have been recorded by Nigeria's anti-corruption fighting agencies.
And it is your expectation that this will continue, that the trend lines will continue, that people will see continued fight against corruption?
Sure. Because that's why I gave you the recent example of Bode George and Bafarawa under the Farida administration. Of course, you know the story of Nuhu Ribadu very well.
Yes. One thing people do not hear about is, and it ties into what you just said, people do not hear about the large numbers of people coming to invest in Nigeria because that doesn't make the news. Good news, by and large, doesn't make the news. Where are the bright spots? Do you know any examples of people who have been companies, individuals who have been successful in investing in Nigeria? I'm sure you have some examples I might want to share with people.
Sure, lots of examples really, but let's just concentrate on some of the well-known areas. I mean, the oil and gas industry, where obviously a lot of American companies are involved. If you recall, about 70% of U.S. private investment in Nigeria is in the oil and gas sector. And we can cite the telecommunication sector, which is the biggest in Africa. Nigeria now has over 60 million telephone lines. Some 10 years ago, it's only about 1 million, less than 1 million line. And South African companies have been, making good business there. And I have MTN in mind. And MTN is not the only South African company that is doing very well in Nigeria. There is Protea, the hospitality hotel management group. There are a couple of insurance companies, banks, and of course ShopRite and other retail businesses from South Africa. So the area we are now emphasizing, the government is now emphasizing, is in the development of infrastructure. You may have heard about some few businesses relocating to some other places from Nigeria because of power problems, the generation of power. So power is one key sector where we are looking for investments, and a lot of investments have started coming in for the development of the power sector in Nigeria. Housing construction, Abuja, the capital city of Nigeria, is known as the biggest construction site in Africa right now. So there is a lot of opportunities for healthcare delivery is another area, water development, and not to talk about agriculture, which we consider as the ultimate rescue operation for the Nigerian economy. And a lot of opportunities exist in agribusiness and export paths, which have been concentrating on the development of the cassava industry, is a very good example of what is on the table now.
Speaking of export path, one of the things our partnership can do is to provide financial assistance. Let's focus our attention to Nigerians in diaspora. Let's just think about Nigerians who are here, who are thinking of going home, right? And I have to say there's a lot of patriotic fervor. A lot of Nigerians would like to do something back home. What do you say to Nigerians who are away from home, who are looking to go home? What's your message to them?
Thank you very much. At the level of the embassy, of course, we have always engaged our nationals in the diaspora. We have always told them how other countries have relied on the intellectual and financial resources of their nationals in diaspora to develop. You know about the cases of the East Asian countries, and even in Africa, cases of Egypt, where a lot of investment is coming from their nationals abroad. And we have done a few road shows here in the embassy on Vision 2020 and how our nationals can plug into the programs being unfolded by Vision 2020 so that they can come home and invest. We have agencies that are taking care of this. First of all, we have the SMED, the Small and Medium Enterprises Development Agency, which is trying to bring to the table the advantages of setting up cottage industries, small industries. A lot of the U.S. economy is dependent on small and medium entrepreneurs. So is the economy of Germany. It is not the big companies that the economy actually depends on. So we are encouraging our nationals with a little capital to start businesses, not to just remit money to family members to build houses for them, but to really start some little business. And there are agencies that can be of assistance. The Nigeria Investment Promotion Commission is there, apart from SMED. And here at the level of the embassy, we have a trade and investment desk that will be able to offer some advice to our nationals. So it's really a matter of trying to focus on what you want to do in Nigeria in the next few years. And there are many agencies and institutions that will be of assistance. We can provide the website addresses of some of these people. You can come to us directly or send your questions to the embassy and we will answer them.
Okay. Let's focus on this small person, this small business that you've just talked about, right? So let's imagine someone who's working in the middle of America somewhere, who has a maybe a job with a government agency or a city agency or something, and who has been able to save, let's just say, $10,000, which they want to start a small business in Nigeria with. Not that 10,000 is small, but let's just take 10,000. Can you give us some sense of where you see the potential opportunities, sort of where people can start small and grow? What, in your experience, could or has worked?
This is why I really gave the example of the Smedan. Smedan is Nigeria's equivalent of the SBA here in the United States of America. And if one has a very good plan and the little capital that you have mentioned, we can connect that individual or groups of individuals to Smedan through our trade and investment desk here, and of course to partner with people like you who are providing access to finances and access to small business development support services. I think that if one really focuses on what he or she wants to do, there are many platforms to assist.
Let's compare Nigeria to the US again. There's this sense that investing in Nigeria is inherently more risky than investing here in the States. Do you agree? I mean, what do you make of this?
I cannot pretend that Nigeria is a risk-free environment. So if the US is not a risk-free environment, we have challenges, so we cannot really compare US and Nigeria in that sense, because the system here has been developed for over 200 years. We are a very young democracy, an emerging market, and but we have put all the necessary infrastructure in place, the legal environment, the institutional environment. We have virtually created a very friendly business environment. And as I said, people should not look at just the risks. They should also look at the opportunities, because the return on investments in Nigeria is very, very high. Very, very high.
You're an export path partner, so you know how we work. I mean, we work in several African countries. We're in Nigeria, we're in Ghana, we're in Tanzania, we're in Ethiopia, we're in other places. Why Nigeria instead of all these other places?
Again, we have to come back to the demographics. This is a country of 155 million people with huge natural resources from different parts of the country. And I have already mentioned the case of minerals and the agricultural crops and products from Lagos to Maiduguri in the far north. We have abundant manpower, whether it's skilled or unskilled. We have qualified manpower in virtually every aspect of human civilization in Nigeria, and the records of Nigerians abroad proves this.
Let's talk about the business voyages to Nigeria, which we're planning, where we're going to take U.S. investors to Nigeria to sort of help them see all the wonderful things that you've talked about. I know you're very busy, you're probably not going to be there during the voyages, but if you were to be there on one of these, and we hope you come at some point, what is the one thing you'd like somebody who's never been to Nigeria to experience? What would you like them to see? First time visitor to Nigeria, what's the one thing that you would really want them to see?
I guess, as the saying goes, every investor is first of all a tourist. Nigeria has very rich but yet undeveloped ecotourism. That is for sure. It has a very big, very rich culture. Actually, right now we are partnering with the Smithsonian National Museum of African Art here in Washington. They approached us because they have seen Nigeria's huge cultural diversity, and we are working on putting up something on the cultural track between us and them. So, apart from generally speaking about ecotourism and Nigeria's very rich cultural diversity, one very important organization that I must mention for somebody who is embarking on a pioneering effort to come to Nigeria to invest will be the Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission, the NIPC. You know, of course, the website of the NIPC there for you to visit, and this is a one-stop investment facility that was created by government to break all bureaucratic bottlenecks, to provide tax concessions to, first-time investors who would like to repatriate their profits or capitals 100% if they want, and who will really get to know about the Nigerian business environment very well if they go to the NIPC.
Okay. Let's get personal. You've worked in the Foreign Service for a long time, and I'm sure someday you're going to retire after what is an illustrious career. What's next on the horizon for you? What are you going to do after this?
Well, they said every destination the beginning of another journey. So life continues. I have enjoyed my life. I'm still enjoying my life in the Foreign Service. As you have mentioned yourself, I have been everywhere, from the Middle East to the Far East to Europe to Americas, and maybe I am just trying to go back home now. And eventually, when I go back home, perhaps I would like to be a farmer. I have a small farm between Kefi and Abuja, if you know the federal capital very well in Nigeria. I have a small farm there, which I would like to develop into something big, maybe introduce some fish farming into what I am already doing by way of growing cassava and beans and some economic trees like mango and guava. I hope to develop that. Farming is good for your health, apart from the little income it will bring to you. After all, I come from a farming environment.
So there is a farmer inside there waiting to just bust out, right?
Sure, which means I am also a potential investor.
Thank you very much for your time. It's been great talking to you.
You're welcome, Mr. Maka.
Thank you. Now, you've heard from two ambassadors from two of several countries in which we work. We thank the ambassadors again for joining us in this conversation. They are valued partners in our collective effort in Export Path. One of the things that you would see, a common theme in speaking to these two envoys, and frankly in just about all the other ambassadors and government representatives who we work with, is the issue of attracting foreign investment. How do we get people to invest in our countries? What are the sectors in which we want them to, what are our priority sectors, and how do we attract the funding? So what I want to do for the rest of our time is to talk to you about access to finance, the financial services, the financial support services that we have available in Export Path through vertical optimization. And we think the combination of Export Path, which provides access to markets, and access to financial services provides a compelling combination that could assist and has been assisting small businesses to enter the international market. So what I'm going to do is to talk to you about our role as loan originators for OPIC. I should make this point that we're talking about OPIC as in OPIC, which is Overseas Private Investment Corporation, and not OPEC, OPEC, which is Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. The Overseas Private Investment Corporation, OPEC, was established in 1971 as an agency of the United States government. OPIC helps U.S. businesses invest overseas, fosters economic development in new and emerging markets, and complements the private sector in managing risks associated with foreign direct investment and supports U.S. foreign policy. OPIC, you may look up the website, opic.gov, provides three principal services to small businesses. The first is loans to support overseas investment. The second is political risk insurance to cover overseas investments facing significant political risk exposure. And the third is access to business development assistance to eligible enterprises in sub-Saharan Africa. OPIC supports small businesses through a handful of vetted and carefully designated service providers known collectively as the Enterprise Development Network, EDN. And there are two kinds of EDN members: network investors who provide investment capital to qualifying businesses, and originators who engage, develop, and assist businesses to access these financial services. Businesses can access these financial services through EDN originators. And vertical optimization is an EDN originator for financing and political risk insurance. The combination of EDN and Export Path, which is accessible only through vertical optimization, creates an unparalleled opportunity for small businesses on both sides of the Atlantic: access to capital and access to markets. For US businesses, this combination enables access to opportunities in fast-growing emerging markets, including several African countries. You just heard from two ambassadors. Support in developing new products and services for new markets, access to a network of partner institutions and organizations committed to wealth creation. And of course, it gives you a chance to meet and partner with foreign companies via Export Path voyages. Most importantly, it enables access to political risk insurance and loans, ranging from $100,000 on the low end to $250 million from OPIC, in addition to potential financial support from in-country partners. Now, on the other side, African businesses can benefit tremendously from this: product development support to suit consumer preferences and meet international standards, quality management to improve productivity, to reduce cost, access to business development assistance through grants from OPIC for eligible businesses and enterprises, access to prospective U.S. allies, suppliers, and partners, and access to affordable export finance from domestic banking partners. Most importantly, we think the access to hands-on sales and marketing support in the U.S. and other African countries for Export Path clients is one of the most important services that we can offer to our clients. And all these are available to you for registering in Export Path. So if you look back, what have we done? We are providing business development support to get the business up and running, get the product right, access to financial services. You need money to make these things work. And we're enabling access to the marketplace, operational support, marketing support, all the bits and pieces you need to make this work. So where's the catch? The catch is that this is a lot of work. It requires concerted and considerable effort from businesses to pull this off. This is like any other enterprise. It requires work, it requires dedication, and most of all, it requires careful commitment to the facts on the ground. And this is what we help our clients do. You're probably wondering how all of this works, and it would probably be helpful to clarify exactly how the whole OPIC process works, because in speaking to people, there's some confusion around that. There are OPIC loans, for which OPIC is traditionally known, and there are grants under the African Technical Assistance Program. OPIC loans are available to U.S. entities, and loans for us or loan originators, we can assist for loans in the range of $100,000 on the low end to $250 million on the high end. And if you're interested in the eligibility criteria, please call our office. The second activity is grants specifically for African-based businesses under the African Technical Assistance Program, ATA. And the intent behind ATA is to help build capacity in African businesses by assisting them to defray part of the cost of the business development services that they need to grow. That's the idea behind ATA. So ATA would help to pay for things like business planning, feasibility studies, accounting services, a whole range of business development services. And ATA may pay up to 50% of the cost of those services if approved by the EDN program manager. And the application process, the application and the management of access to these ATA funds is done through a loan originator such as Vertical Optimization. So we can help you through this process and help you deliver the actual business development services so that the African business grows. So imagine an idealized scenario in which a US firm wants to partner with an African firm. The African firm might benefit from the ATA grant to help build up its internal capacity and eventually become the target of funds from the US partner looking to invest in that company. I should point out that it is not a requirement of the ATA grant that the firm come to borrow from OPIC. I should make that point. And there's no gainsaying that ATA funds can only go to eligible businesses in OPIC eligible countries, and we shall scroll the list of OPIC eligible countries on the screen at the end of this so that you see the countries that qualify. It's quite an extensive list. So there is support, and even if you don't qualify for OPIC funding or OPIC assistance, or if this is not the right opportunity for you, we have in-country partners, banks and financial service providers who might be able to assist you get the money you need to grow your business. The important thing is to get started. So what is the next step you need to take? Well, give us a call. Our telephone number is 888-506-3265, or you may visit our website, which is shown on the screen. Make contact. Let's learn what you want to do, and I'm sure that we'll be able to assist you, at least point you in the right direction. Let me just make something clear, because this has come up in our dialogue with certain clients. We as loan originators, we as an export path partner, have a responsibility to make sure that by the time we present a company to any of our financial service partners on the export path side, or present them to the EDN program manager on the OPIC side, that we have done our due diligence ourselves. So we shall ask you to assist us, do some discovery on you so that we know what the history of your company is, what have you done, and maybe you've applied for loans in the past. We want to get a clear, true picture of what the state of your enterprise is. We may do some background work to make sure that there's nothing that would be embarrassing to any of our partners or service providers. And where there's something that may not be on the up and up, we address it openly and clearly to make it work. The intent is not to catch you or trip you up. It's to put everything on the table so that everybody has a chance to evaluate the actual and true state of your enterprise at the point of decision. So we are here to assist you. As you've heard from the two ambassadors who you saw before this, we work very closely with the government, we work closely with banks, and we also have responsibilities to OPIC as loan originators to make sure that we do our homework before delivering clients to them. So I hope this is helpful. Just to recap, Export Path is here to provide you access to markets, product development, service development, in-country support, all the bits and pieces you need to get on the ground. And we also have access to some support. We can enable access to financial assistance from OPIC for qualified businesses, and or financial support from our in-country partners as well in the export path countries. Please take a look at the list of OPIC eligible countries to make sure that your project is in one of those, because that's the only way that your project will be considered. And there is a list of requirements for OPIC loans and for ATA grants. Please call us for us to provide you this list to make sure that you qualify. Most of all, get started, and I thank you for watching. Bye-bye.